What I share now should never have emerged from the shadows where it lay for decades. These words, which now reach you, found their way through silent corridors, sealed archives, and whispered voices that vanished one by one. I'm not the first to bear this burden. I'm only the current guardian of a truth that perhaps ought to have remained buried. But there are moments when silence becomes complicit, and this is one of them. In a dust-coated chamber of the Vatican, Apostolic Library, among medieval manuscripts and papal correspondence, there lies a wooden box sealed with red wax and symbols not belonging to any official liturgy. Inside it, wrapped in layers of blessed cloth, rests a letter penned in the trembling hand of a man who bore Christ's stigmata for 50 years. St. Pio of Pietrelcina, canonized in 2002, whose miracles and bilocation powers challenged even the Church's own skepticism. What few know is that his final writings, dated 1968, mere weeks before his death, were immediately confiscated by Vatican authorities. The contents of this letter have never seen the light of day until now. The yellowed manuscript recounts an encounter during one of the stigmatized saint's long nights of prayer. A presence neither human nor wholly divine, but something between those realms, manifested in his monastic cell. What began as a faint glow swelled into the outline of a being St. Pio at first mistook for an angel. Its eyes contained all, the stars of the firmament, he wrote, yet in them lay a sorrow no celestial creature should bear. The entity identified itself as Raziel, a name appearing in apocryphal texts as the keeper of God's secrets. According to ancient Kabbalistic writings, Raziel was present at creation and recorded all divine knowledge in a book he later gave to Adam after the expulsion from Eden. But the Raziel who visited St. Pio did not come as a divine messenger. He came as a refugee, a deserter from a cosmic war that did not begin in heaven, as we have been told, but in a place much closer to us. What you call the fall was not a single event, but an ongoing process, the being revealed to Pio. We were banished not only from paradise, but from all truth about our own existence. The angel's words, meticulously transcribed by the saint's trembling hand, suggested that the biblical story of Lucifer's rebellion was only the surface of a far more complex reality. Raziel spoke of a fracture in the very fabric of reality, a crack that did not merely separate good from evil, but had divided the very nature of universal consciousness. Brother Matthew Corrado, the assistant librarian who allowed me a brief glimpse of the document, vanished 3 days after our meeting. His body was never found, but a small wooden cross he always carried arrived in my mailbox 1 week later, wrapped in a piece of cloth bearing Latin words in archaic script. Quod vides ne reveles, what you have seen, do not reveal. But the weight of that letter was too great to carry in silence. St. Pio wrote that Raziel confided certain angels, including himself, had not been created by God, but had emerged as autonomous consciousnesses from the cosmos itself, entities existing in the interstices between matter and energy, time and space. We are the forgotten children of creation, Raziel purportedly said, neither divine nor fallen, but trapped between these natures, condemned to bear witness without the power to fully intervene. The letter went on to describe how Raziel showed Pio visions of a reality beyond what human senses can perceive, a world where luminous beings constantly interact with our dimension, not as benevolent guardians, as Christian doctrine suggests, but as anguished observers of a cosmic experiment gone awry. I saw through his eyes, wrote the saint, and understood that what we call humanity is merely a temporary manifestation of something far greater. We are like bubbles rising on the surface of an infinite ocean of consciousness, believing ourselves separate when in truth we are but momentary expressions of the same water. According to the account, Raziel revealed that the Vatican had safeguarded knowledge of these entities since the Church's earliest centuries. In the deepest catacombs of the papal archives, there is said to be a section called the Custodia Angelorum, custody of the angels, cataloguing centuries of interactions between these beings and prominent religious figures. Saint Francis, or Assisi, Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John of the Cross, all documented similar encounters, but their most explicit testimonies were systematically excised from official hagiographies. Dr. Helen Vasari, a medieval documents historian I met in Rome, confirmed in a discreet cafe outside Vatican walls, there are chronological gaps in nearly every saint's life who reported intense mystical experiences, weeks or months unaccounted for, always coinciding with moments of supposed divine illumination or spiritual ecstasy. 3 months after our conversation, Dr. Vasari abruptly retired to a monastery in the Alps, abandoning her academic chair and decades-long research career. Raziel allegedly told Pio that these condemned angels were not supernatural beings, but natural entities in a sense that human science is only beginning to grasp. They occupy dimensions adjacent to our own, existing at vibrational frequencies normally beyond human perception. What ancient traditions called the veil between worlds was, in fact, a perceptual limitation, a neurological inability to process realities coexisting with ours. It's not that we cannot intervene, Raziel said, but that our intervention has consequences we cannot fully foresee. Every miracle, every vision, every prophetic dream we send ripples the web of reality in unpredictable ways. St. Pio described how, during his encounter, he experienced a temporary dissolution of personal identity, merging momentarily with the angelic consciousness. In that state of union, he glimpsed what he called the Great Cycle, a recurring pattern in human history where eras of profound spiritual and scientific enlightenment are followed by ages of darkness and forgetting. These are not accidents of history, he wrote, but deliberate interventions to recalibrate the course of collective consciousness. If these revelations resonate with something deep within you, as they did with me, consider following this channel for more of these suppressed accounts. For there are many of us seeking truth in the shadows, forming a network that not even the guardians of secrets can fully silence. The most disturbing suggestion of the Italian saint's account was that these cycles are accelerating toward a convergence point. Raziel warned of an imminent moment when the veil between dimensions would become so thin that consensual reality might collapse entirely. This moment of recognition, as he called it, would not be a biblical apocalypse of fire and brimstone, but a fundamental transformation of human consciousness, an evolutionary leap not all could withstand. Monsignor Richard Salvatore, who worked in St. Pio's canonization office, confided during a meeting in the Vatican, "There are aspects of the saint's life that will never be publicly revealed, not out of malice or deceit, but because certain experiences transcend the capacity of human language. When I specifically mentioned rumors of a final letter, his face went pale. Some documents are sealed not to hide truth, but to protect the faithful from knowledge they are not prepared to bear." 3 months later, Monsignor Salvatore was transferred to a remote mission in Alaska, a curious posting for a cleric of his rank and age. In the weeks following my discovery of this letter, strange occurrences began to plague me. Objects would shift position when I wasn't looking. Lights flickered for no reason. One night I awoke at 3:33 a.m. with a chilling sensation of being watched, only to glimpse a translucent figure standing at the foot of my bed, dissipating when I blinked. On 3 separate occasions, strangers approached me in the street to deliver cryptic messages. "Some doors must remain closed," one said. Not all light comes to illuminate, warned another. The third merely whispered, "They know that you know," before vanishing into the crowd. Dr. Ian Blackwood, a parapsychologist I consulted, offered a disturbing perspective. There are consistent reports in many cultures of threshold guardians, entities that appear when someone nears forbidden knowledge, not necessarily to threaten, but to test the seeker's resolve. When I asked whether he believed these manifestations were literal or psychological, he replied, "At the vibrational frequency where these interactions occur, that distinction loses its meaning." The copy of the letter I briefly held has since disappeared from the archive where I found it. Brother Matthew, who showed it to me, cannot be located. My notes remain intact, though on 2 occasions I discovered pages out of order, margins scrawled with unknown symbols. Symbols I certainly did not write. I share this account knowing the risks. It may be nothing more than an elaborate theological construct, the fevered delirium of an aged saint on the brink of death. Or perhaps it is exactly what it appears to be, a glimpse of a reality far vaster than we ordinarily perceive. In the letter's closing lines, St. Pio wrote, "Raziel told me the knowledge he shared was like a seed, planted not only in my mind, but through me, in the soil of collective consciousness. Some will try to uproot this seed," he warned. "Others will bury it deeper, but once planted, it will eventually sprout." And now this seed has been planted in you, reader. What will you do with it? Dismiss it as fantasy or conspiracy, or allow it to germinate in your own understanding, expanding the boundaries of what you consider real? Perhaps you too have experienced moments of permeability in your life, fleeting instants when the veil seems thinner, when something watches you from an impossible angle. Are these moments mere neurological glitches, as materialist science insists, or genuine glimpses of a cosmos infinitely more complex and interconnected than we dare acknowledge? The last time I visited Rome, I paused before the statue of St. Pio in St. Peter's Basilica. For a fleeting moment, in a certain light, I could have sworn his stone eyes moved, tracking something unseen drifting through the nave. When I looked in that direction, all I saw were tourists and pilgrims. Yet, for that brief instant, I felt, with absolute certainty, that the basilica was far more crowded than it appeared, filled with presences dwelling at the edge of perception, patiently observing as we, in our limited three-dimensional reality, performed our small rituals, oblivious to the vastness that surrounds us. And you, who have accompanied me on this unsettling journey, have you ever felt watched when completely alone? Have you caught movement at the corner of your eye that vanishes when you look directly? Have you awakened convinced someone just spoke your name, though no one was there? Perhaps Raziel is trying to reach you too,